A warm welcome to Danir Meets Danir. Talk about different topics with interesting and smart people. Today's topic is the tech shift. And the smart and interesting people today are Anna-Paula Jonsson, welcome.
Thank you.
Jon Carvell, welcome.
Thank you.
And Bhavin Patel, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you all?
Really good.
Yeah? Yeah? We're going to talk about the tech shift. But before we do that, I want to have you all having a short presentation about yourself. Anna-Paula, shall you start? What's your background?
My background is in social science and quite international. And I've worked a lot with urbanism over the years. And since I began at Kairos Future about 3 years ago, I've been focusing mostly on strategy and foresight.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about tech today. Your background, it's you have a tech background as well, as your father is an engineer, isn't he?
He was.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. Have you considered being an engineer yourself ever?
For a brief moment, until I realized it was a mistake.
Okay.
Because I really am a humanist.
Yeah.
And my way of framing and thinking about questions and issues always kind of come down to the human being and the process that happens between humans in change. And I think that's probably why I'm so interested in tech these days, because it's having such a massive impact on how we live our lives.
Yeah. And you've been working a lot abroad?
Yes.
Yeah, in different countries, different cultures?
Yeah.
Yeah. How has that made an impact on you?
Well, I was actually just preparing a talk for a tech conference focused on travel actors or companies in the travel sector. And it struck me that one of the reasons for why travels or travel experiences can be so meaningful for us is that we're in a different state of mind when we travel. We're more open. We don't have systems to follow or rules. We kind of have to dance and improvise a little bit. Sometimes that's exciting. Sometimes it's really scary. But it has interesting, I think, connections to how we learn, because it's when we are more porous, more feeling less rigid in our routines, that we actually are more open also to more experiences, learning, and truly understanding things. So it makes you grow as a person.
Interesting. We're going to come back to that. Jon?
Yep.
What is your background when it comes to tech?
Tech.
And what's your role today? I'm sorry.
Okay. Today I'm the group CEO of Qgroup and also vice president of Next Group. And my technical background is that I originally studied computer science in Chalmers in Gothenburg. So I got my master's degree there. And then I worked for short number of years as a systems developer, a consultant. But after that, I turned more into sales and management, and that's where I've been stuck for a bunch of years.
Yeah. And it's quite new that you're in the Danir group as well?
Absolutely. It's not even a year ago since we joined Nexer with Qgroup. So we are probably the newest one in the family.
Yeah. And I know that you've been in tech changes before. I mean, you entered the line of business in the 90s.
Yeah.
And you had also a big impact at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, definitely. I've been, as Anna-Paula, I've also been working abroad and seen tech shifts in both Sweden and abroad, much based on where you come from. But wherever you have been, there have been tech changes. Yes, there's always been. That's the only solid part of technology, is that it's always changing the whole time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with mobile phones, and even back to the time when all of a sudden you could program using Visual Basic, the IoT, and all of these tech changes have also raised a lot of expectations, and some have been proven to come true, some have been overproven, and some have not happened. So I think the tech changes are really an interesting topic, because it connects also a lot to what Anna-Paula is talking about. It always connects to human and human behavior, and what we really want out of technology.
And Qgroup has international offices as well?
We do.
Yeah.
We've been working since the start with the internationalization from many points of view. I mean, one aspect has been that we wanted to offer our consultants the opportunity to work at the most interesting clients, and they are not necessarily in Sweden the whole time. But the fun fact has always also been that when we have established ourselves abroad, many of the clients in Sweden who's been seen perhaps more as mainstream, but big, strong Swedish brands have been the dream clients of consultants that come from the US or from Germany. So in that way, we have been able to keep consultants from both Sweden and internationally happy and intrigued by their assignments.
Bhavin?
Yeah.
How about you? The background?
So I also have a background as you in computer science. I studied in India. I originate from India. I've been into many different countries throughout my career. Started as a software developer, and then I went to Japan very early in my career for a year. I learned Japanese. I'm still proud of it. Then I moved back to India. I've worked in multinational companies in India like Dell, Bosch, etc. I've moved to Germany, worked there for a year. All this time I was a developer. And I moved 2008 to Ericsson, starting working with mobile platforms. And then I did my master's in business administration from London School of Business and Finance. From there, I shifted the roles to the management. So that's a little bit of history.
And the MBA was in London?
No, it was online MBA.
Oh,
so the
nice.
tech made it easy.
Yeah, nice. And coming to Sweden then, now the job today?
I'm CEO of Sigma Connectivity, which is part of Sigma Connectivity Group.
Yeah. How long have you been there?
3.5 years.
Yeah. And the part that you have today is recently?
I just took over as a CEO a month ago.
Yeah.
I started in Sigma Connectivity as a heading software, and I moved to head R&D.
Yeah.
And that was short lead assignment. In 6 months, I was promoted to CEO.
So all three of you have both Swedish and international experiences, and you have different angles of looking at tech change and the tech shift. So Anna-Paula, what is the job that you do at Kairos Future today? What is the main purpose of your job?
Oh, I think a purpose that is unfolding and emerging at the moment is not necessarily because we are not a tech company primarily to understand the tech, but to understand the significance of the tech, both on different industries, on strategy, but on humanity as well, and how we're changing in terms of how this new technology that is kind of already talking back at us, soon it will be looking back at us. How is that going to make us renegotiate what it means to be a human being?
Mm. Is it the AI talk that has stressed up the level of demands from clients?
I certainly think AI has most people stressed out. How are we going to adopt it? What are other people doing? Or even, what is AI? There's a lot of misconception. There's a lot of need for separating kind of apples and pears. And there's definitely also a growing need to navigate how we think about this transition. At Kairos and also at Nexer, we've been working with a framework which splits this up in 2 different fronts. You need to both understand what the technology can do for your industry, your company, and what you're trying to deliver. But at the same time, you need to have sort of a pair of eyes onto the world as well. Are we even going to be relevant doing what we're doing now, even if we become automated and more efficient?
And you're helping Nexer with this right now?
We have been collaborating on that, yes.
Yeah. And Jon, you being quite new in the Nexer group, but your method of educating yourself during the years, you always educated yourself.
I had to.
Yeah, and all the consultants as well.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, that has been continuous throughout the years. As I said before, I mean, the original consultancy company that I started with in 95, then it was much more purely embedded technology that a consultancy company helped their clients with. And everybody needed to be like me and Bhavin. You need to be an engineer with a master's degree, and you're going to program this real-time operating system to a switchboard or something. Over the years, the role, the profile, specifically the type of client that we can work with has shifted enormously. I mean, from the beginning, there was only industry companies that we worked against. Now we can work with, I mean, retail companies, with the public sector, all over. So, as I said before, I mean, the change in technology has been very clear, and also the need for the competence with the consultants to change with that change also. So very challenging in many aspects, but I think that if you choose a career as a consultant, you have also made the choice to keep on moving the whole time. You don't want to get to sit with only one assignment for the rest of your life. You maybe want to try out a lot of clients, a lot of different branches, and certainly a lot of different kinds of technology also.
But I mean, you made it change from being a software engineer. You're still a software engineer, but you added the business and the management.
Right.
Is that a way to do it, to get educated into understanding more aspects of something?
Right. So I think the driving factor for me was that the tech shifts and so on. What I saw is that when you you want to make a bigger impact, and I wanted to make a bigger impact in the company. So I understood that decision making is via management. So I needed to learn the toolbox. I understood technology. I was learning new technology all the time. But how does that translate into product or services? And how do you make those decisions to bring it to life? And that was the driving factor. And I think we all have heard about the Kodak story, where they knew the digital full cameras are coming, but they kind of became like an ostrich, put their heads down in the sand. And I think that's the key for management, to have that right balance. And that's what I was most curious. So I wanted to learn those tools and start to make a bigger impact. And that made the turn in my career.
And I mean, when you spoke about this before this conversation, you said that you started working with AI 2014.
Yes.
In what context?
So the funny story is 2013, 14, we closed down Ericsson mobile platform, and we were all transitioning. So I had some extra time. I started to take courses on AI because that sounded like an interesting thing. In university, you learn a little bit about AI in 90s when you went through the university. But by 2014, there were interesting papers coming out, and it was quite maturing. So I started to learn about AI, and that's when I realized that this technology has going to have such a big impact all across the technology and the human society. So I became evangelist in 2014 in Ericsson to push for AI proof of concepts, AI services to be developed. Our first demo happened in 2018, which was shown in Mobile World Congress, saving power consumption on Ericsson mobile platforms, Ericsson mobile towers. And if you imagine, there are thousands of towers across the globe, and you save power, that means you are creating a sustainable future and so much money in the operational cost. So we realized the power of the technology is even humongous.
But you say evangelist. How long did it take before someone listened at what you had to say?
So that's why I actually shifted to management.
Okay.
So I went with an idea to a lot of people, and they all liked the idea, but to make an investment, it was tough because it was no immediate return. The immediate quarterly results or immediate returns and the goals are different in such a big company. So I said then I would become a first engineering manager, I would have a couple of teams. I would make 1 or 2 people start to work on this idea, inspire them and work with this. And that's when we created the proof of concept. I realized the leaders are super busy. If you just put PowerPoint presentation without concept, they will not make a decision. But if you have something working, then it's much easier to make a decision. And that's what we created. And then it kind of started to pick up more and more.
A successful business case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something which is in hand. You can see the results. That makes much more impact than the PowerPoint presentation.
But did you get an okay from the management to do the business case, or you just did it?
Beauty of the company in Sweden, all the companies, is the skunk work. So we did this as a skunk work.
Okay. Anna-Paula, when clients call you and they want to do skunk work, when they don't have the idea of doing skunk work, how do you get them to think, take it easy, relax, let's look at the problem in a different aspect? How do you refer to the client as saying stuff like that?
Yeah, where do you start?
I don't know.
I use a lot of design thinking at first point of contact with the client to not assume everything is a nail just because I'm holding a hammer. So to kind of really understand what the issue is before I start diagnosing or designing a solution or a process for a strategy process, for example. So, in some cases, the issue is that the client is worried about the tech transition. And it turns out they don't understand what AI is. So the first thing might need to be, okay, let's understand what AI is. But in other cases, there is a fairly good understanding about AI, but we don't know what your company is trying to achieve. What is your reason for existing in the world? They might be selling different kind of products or services, but it's not entirely clear how we can leverage AI to deliver that value, which is eventually the point where we want to get.
Good. So, you said something about companies making other possibilities, like Amazon, for instance, that they are looking at nuclear energy or stuff like that. Is that one way of getting the clients to focus on other things than the problems or the obstacles?
Well, I think with Amazon and energy, it's a simple strategic choice, understanding that we're going down a road where the projected energy consumption following the projections of compute generation, driving at energy from data centers is going to be such that the current supply of energy is simply not enough.
No.
And if you are investing billions of dollars in infrastructure that counts on that energy, you want to be sure you've got access to energy, right? So all of a sudden that becomes a strategic asset in a landscape where we haven't seen private actors going that deep into the value chain before for resources, right? But it's not something that a normal company would be bothered by.
No, but the context is that they see a problem. They might be out of energy, so they look at it. When a company comes to you and say, okay, AI is going to take our jobs away, or how do you manage that meeting? How do you comfort them and say, we can help you, guide you?
Well, I think, the energy analysis in terms of Amazon is actually a really good example of applied foresight.
Yeah.
So what they probably did at some point was looking down the line, right? If the models keep developing like this, if usage keeps developing like this, if the energy in terms of production develops like this, then, one of the scenarios going down the road might be not having enough energy, and that blocks our entire return on investment process, right? So what I try to do to calm people down is perhaps show them what the next step is towards what they need to know. So I think it's helpful to, as early as possible in the process, establish what do you need to know to move forward? And how do we figure that out? Then there's a plan, and that usually calms people down.
Jon, you are in the process of doing that, or you've always been doing that, looking forward. How do we have to accelerate our skill set in different ways? When did you see the need for AI? Like 2014, and when did you realize we have to get better?
Much later than Bhavin, I must admit. But at the same time, I'm a bit of a initial skeptic to all things that wow, shit, this is going to change everything. I firmly believe that we are not living in a new unique time in history, because I think that's a common mistake that people have done throughout history, to think that now everything will change from the core. I believe that AI is going to definitely increase the productivity that we as a consultancy company can deliver in the same way as we have had many other sequences of productivity increase throughout my career. And way before that also was very funny, because I watched Anna-Paula's colleague hold a presentation once, and he showed a short statement that said that with this technology shift, there will be no longer a need for a workforce. And then he asked, when do you think this is from, this quote? And of course, we thought that it was recent regarding AI, but it turned out to be during the automation of the American car industry. And when they followed up that after maybe a 5 or 10 year period, it turned out that the workforce has almost doubled. But what they didn't talk so much about was, of course, that the production of cars had all of a sudden been accelerated so much that it started to be something that everybody could own. So it definitely changed the way and what people worked with. So AI will certainly mean a lot of productivity increase for sure. It will also put new demands on the workforce to be able to work with it in a smart way. I don't believe that it will reduce the need for technical understanding and knowledge, and that we can entrust the AI to make all those decisions itself, at least not for a time period that I can overview now. But there are opportunities and there are concerns also, because a lot of the simpler technical work that needs to be done in a project can definitely today be done by AI, which means that the intro point for younger talent, where do they start? Because in order to go through an AI solution and see, is this secure? Where does the data land? How is the architecture? If we want to build it to something bigger, can we use this framework and so on? It demands a lot of experience. And today I'm not exactly sure where do the junior talents that in time will become the more senior specialists, where do they get their entry point into the system? Yeah.
I mean, you've been on this case for like 12 years now, 14. Yeah. Have you gone through changes within the organization?
Right.
And when you started, what's been your experience? How has it been? Have people been afraid of the tech in your company?
No, I think so far what I've seen is the LLM has changed the landscape. So if you say pre-LLM era and LLM eras, there are two different ones. So pre-LLM era, I think there was a lot of curiosity and everybody wanted to apply AI to make the product or smarter decision. And that was like curiosity and the knowledge was very valuable. LLM has caused a much bigger impact because it can do a lot of routine tasks and make it quite automated. That means it's not about engineering only. In a large organization, you have HR, you have IT, other functions where this might have a much bigger impact. Because all the simple tasks all the workflows where you needed a human in the loop, most likely you don't need anymore. And I think that is where people are afraid of. From engineers' perspective, I think they are still curious. They want to use it. They want to deliver more value. So in our company, we have now selected about 5 projects where we are using LLMs for code development. And we are measuring how much efficiency gain are we getting on what phase of the project. What we have learned, something very interesting, is that LLMs lack the knowledge about system. It can write a program very easily. So if you give a simple task, it can do it, but it doesn't. You need to provide a lot of context. Because when you design a product, it is a complex thing. You are not only making a software functional, but you need to think that product lasts for the whole day battery life. It is feel goods in the hand. You can hold it ergonomically. All of these all these disciplines are interconnected, and AI looks at it as one at a time. So you have to know where you use AI for productivity gains, and then I think people are quite okay. I also agree with your point about where the entry points for juniors are. So I've seen 2 examples of big tech companies. So Ericsson, I have a lot of connections. So Ericsson has made a policy. Most of the people who are below 4 years experience are not allowed to use AI when they write program. They have to develop by themselves. So that's how they learn, and that's how they understand the system. So they are preparing the next generation workforce, and all these guys who already experienced, they should be allowed to use systems so they develop the product and the new features very quickly because they are there. It's an interesting approach. The jury is out. We will know what is the result.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you take a company like Meta, they have taken an extreme position, and today they are saying about 70% of their code is generated by AI.
70.
Yes. So they have taken the extreme position of using AI in everything. And I think that we have to see both the approaches and where we end up. So there is a challenge for a lot of young engineers to enter into the job market right now in many, many US companies. And I think this is, I had a talk with one of the CTO for the startup company, and he sees that. He said, I would have hired 4 junior engineers to start working on my product because they were a startup, they are always cash-strapped. Today, I would only hire 1. So these are the challenges, and I'm quite sure we will find the right balance as we go forward. We have always found it. We would scale it differently. The universities would adapt to their curriculum to the new needs. And so it's a matter of time. But right now we are in a transition, so it's a lot of fog. And also remember, there is a lot of marketing, which you don't know what is right and what is wrong.
But you also remember when the visual development tools came.
Right.
So the real hardcore engineers, they prompt coded.
Yes.
And all of a sudden there was like visual tools where you can drag and drop.
Yeah.
And I remember that, wow, shit, you don't even need to be a programmer anymore. You can just draw blocks and create systems. Well, that never really happened because you needed to understand what you were actually moving for a block, and then you needed to code the unique parts of the system, not only the top interface, and that needed innovation, which were mostly something connected to the human mind. I mean, what can you come up with? What's the smart new solution? So, but for sure, AI will change a lot. And I mean, sometimes I feel like like it's so powerful that it's almost like one of these solutions that are looking for a problem now. We have AI, we can do a lot of stuff. Yeah, what do we want to do? Well, what's the next task? Because using it in daily productivity is certain. I mean, it's already here.
Anna-Paula, like when Bhavin says 2 examples, like Ericsson and Martin, like they put a bet on different roads to success. How is that one of the, I mean, you say leadership is key. Is it important for leaders to make a bet either direction when companies come to you?
I'd say yes. If you don't have a hypothesis or a thought about where things are going or how you will succeed, the risk is you'll just fumble and spread yourself too thin. And then there will be no way for you to explain what went wrong if it doesn't work out because you never had a theory. But if you have a theory, you also have what underpins the theory. And you can track if those underpinning factors or those hypotheses actually play out the way you think, which is a steering tool for you to track and adjust your strategy, right? So in the case of Meta and Ericsson, I think it's super interesting. I mean, like you say, the jig is up, and what's right and what's wrong is also a little bit of a moral issue. I think that, you know, Ericsson probably had a completely different culture, being a Swedish company, than Meta, which is kind of like hardcore, you know, break things fast. And what's the saying? Break things fast.
Fail fast.
Fail fast. Fail fast, break things, and just succeed at whatever cost. We don't really operate like that in Sweden.
No.
And so then maybe you don't care if your juniors get a systems view. You just want them to do for you what you need to be done today, and 5 years down the road, you'll hire a 25-year-old with a systems view. That's someone else educated. That might be how Zuckerberg is reasoning, though.
But is that, I mean, there's an old Japanese proverb that if you take the wrong train, get off fast so you can get back to the original point as take another train. Is it important to fail fast and try and finding the way forward?
Is it important to fail fast? I mean, rather sooner than later, I guess. And I mean, the train metaphor is great because it assumes you know where you're going. You know, like you cannot get off the train because it's going in the wrong direction if you don't know in what direction you want to go.
Yeah.
If you're going anywhere, there is no wrong direction.
No.
You can't get off.
No.
So.
And you've been doing that for a while with your team, that you help each other, giving you feedback and helping each other in the right direction.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to send those signals as a leader early, that we don't know all the answers, but we must try, and we want to get a feedback so we can course correct and move on. And it's a continuous process. And I think that's the mindset which you were saying, staying curious is a nature of the consultancy business. You have to stay curious. You have to figure out what's working, what's not working, and adapt. I think we are very good as a human race. We have done that for centuries now, right? So with AI, there are, I think, as you said, there are misconceptions, and we are nowhere near to artificial general intelligence. We are far away from that. LLMs, if you look at its nutshell, what it is doing is actually predicting the next word. That's what it is doing in a nutshell. But it has a much larger context, and it had consumed the knowledge base of entire internet. So many, many things it could do much, much quicker, and it could find that information much better in a humanly expressive way. And that's why we are so impressed. But they are not very close to artificial general intelligence. So for example, today's LLM, if you put this glass close to edge of this, after 8 months of birth, a child would recognize that this will fall. This is scientifically proven. LLMs will not be able to. That's why there is a talk about physical AI now, right? So a child consumes about 2 billion bytes of information every day through different five senses. An LLM has been trained about 100 billion tokens or maybe a trillion tokens. So if you think about age of knowledge of LLM is about 5 years old child. So there is a long way to be afraid that we will all lose job. But there will be productivity gains. There are certain roles which will be redundant. Like in factory example which you gave, we didn't need probably same kind of skill set in the same amount, but we need a different kind of skill set, maybe even more. I think that's where we are heading as of now, at least.
My wife, she can predict my next work, but she's not that connected to AI. She's the closest to AI I have. But I mean, Jon, when you see this, like the skill set, and you're still improving and improving all the time, when you meet your clients now, what are they stressed up, or are they coming to you with comfort and say, help us and guide us to where we should be? What is the most common question they have?
I think that what they want to feel is that they get a maximum output of our work, which and they are aware, I would say, today. You can say generally because we have such a big client base, and it varies between industry. Of course, it varies a lot between countries as well. The like maturity, the curiosity on using AI, but they expect to get a lot more out of it due to AI. They also acknowledge the fact that they don't know everything today, and that they can't put requests on our solutions, taking into account all things that will happen into the future. But they want to make sure that what we are helping them with today will also be usable in the future. So, because I mean, if you look at AI and I mean, everybody knows that it can create, like you said, the system, and the more you can define it, the better it can build. Which means that the role is more important, to have someone that can describe what you want rather than writing the code. That also means that you can write a lot of code. And if you get everything else in check, then you can continue to write a lot of code also. So the end product will not be as obvious as it used to be when you finalized the project, delivered it, and shook hands and said goodbye. What we can already see now is that the software is much more alive. It will probably live in iterations forever now, rather than that you end up with one final solution. And of course, the question is who will do these iterations over time? Will it be consultants? Will we give a platform to them that they can continue to iterate themselves? I can't answer those questions, so I'm not going to
we give that to Anna-Paula.
That is more for Anna-Paula to answer. But I mean, I think that it's most of all, it's exciting to see. I mean, how will this evolve? But as I said before, I firmly believe that it will need to be validated the whole time by someone understanding what is happening, what are we doing, how are we treating things. The more a problem can be defined, the better it can be. So, I mean, we are consultants. If you're developing a system that you sell today that is clearly definable and so on, I would probably have a bit of a more pulse. I mean, okay, but someone can just show the use cases of my system and ask the AI to build this system. because I can describe it into detail because it already exists. For those companies, I guess and I hope that they understand that the future will be quite different.
Talking about the speed from one tech shift to another one, do they come faster and faster, Jon?
Yes, but I mean, all of us are also persons experiencing things in different parts of our career. So, I mean, tech shifts, I think you would need to expand it maybe like 200 years. Is it going faster and faster? And the obvious answer is yes, but I wonder if anyone wouldn't have said that in 1915 too. How fast, everything is changing now. It's so many drama. For me, the velocity is definitely higher if you compare to social media, if you compare to like the internet or the mobile phones or IoT or one of these like changes that happened. It feels like it's faster. It cuts more through not only the tech world, it cuts through so many other human aspects also. And it's more difficult to predict. But since it happens so fast, I think we have a lot of knowledge also from other tech shifts, like the internet, for example, which we remember when everybody wanted to be at the internet. Why? Because we need to be at the internet. And then all of a sudden, everybody have bought really expensive homepages that no one visited because they were super boring and you couldn't do anything with it. And it took a reshape again until we got to be able to shop comfortably on the internet. And as a part of that social media came, we could socialize on the internet as well. But that was not the first step. The first step was that we just want to use internet. And today it's so included, of course, in everything that we do that we don't reflect much about the internet. Whether it will be the same way with the AI, Anna-Paula will answer soon. But it feels like it will be more central in our whole life rather than just the technical small aspect of shopping or something like that.
What is your concern? Is it faster?
I mean, I think the data is showing that innovation is moving faster and faster from objective data points. And what does that mean? I think that in Sweden, sometimes we say we have a system, and we love a good system because it means you don't need to improvise, right? But we don't have a system for this one. And we've had a lot of tech innovation, introductions and so on that are not general purpose technologies like this one. So I think this one will be a particularly big one. And again, that brings us back to a new mindset that will probably be noticed and necessary to evolve in so many different areas of our economy and society, which is learning to sit with uncertainty, exploring. We're not going to have a system for so many things for a foreseeable future from now on. So that combined with these innovation spurts that will probably unfold, you probably know more about them, presents a very interesting scenario for the world we're going into and what kind of human beings and how we're going to have to be with each other to constantly find new shapes and constellations to navigate that.
I start with a small interesting story about myself. So I saw a computer first time when I got admission in the computer engineering. So access to information around 90s or in Sweden maybe in 80s was a hurdle for kids to innovate, for kids to learn. Today the information is available on fingertips. So if we teach our kids how to learn continuously, That's one of the key assets going forward, because the tech shifts are happening quicker and quicker because we have brought in more people. The information access is simply available to today every rural area in India or China or Taiwan or Malaysia, which means everybody's innovating at the same time. The courses from Stanford University professors are available online free today, which you could not dream 10 years ago without paying $500,000 as a fee, right? So that's why the tech shift and innovation has come faster. But it has also shown, because of that, we are becoming more resilient as a society as well. And I think we will find our way to find new challenges to be solved, because I think the tech shifts and everything is always, we have found what is the next solution, what is the next challenge we as a human has. Maybe one of the biggest challenges of our time is to make this planet sustainable. AI probably will help. Right now it's counterproductive, but one day maybe it will find a solution. So I feel that there is nothing to fear about having the faster tech shift. It's just to have a mindset, as you were saying, to keep learning, to keep exploring.
Okay, we've spoken about the skill sets, but can I challenge you guys?
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about the tech shift, but right now there's a big NATO meeting in Helsingborg. There are 32 ministers coming from all Europe, talking about how to increase the power of defense in NATO. 4.5 years ago, that would have been impossible in Sweden because we were not in NATO. We didn't talk about the defense and stuff like that. And now it's been a mental shift. So is it, I mean, you three guys talk about it's not a tech shift, it's a mental shift. Or am I reading you wrong?
Why do you look at me?
Because you're the future. No, but what is your context in it? Is it a tech shift or is it a mental shift?
I think the tech shift will bring about a mental shift.
Yeah.
I think that, can I share some theory?
Yes, that's what you do best, isn't it?
So there's this framework I love working with right now, and that used by a strategist and writer called Roger Martin. And he splits up work and knowledge in 3 categories: algorithmic work or knowledge, heuristic, and mystical. And algorithmic work is the kind of stuff we have systems for, processes. It's fairly, predictable. McDonald's, you would never compliment the guy at McDonald's that the burger was so good today, because there you have a system for it. There is no agency there, right? Heuristics, some system, kind of like rule of thumb, best practice, but you still need judgment to carry out the process. And then the mystical part is we just don't know what this is. We might know something is going on at best, but we don't know. We don't have knowledge about this yet. So what's happening in the algorithmical part now is really interesting, given that LLM specifically, but also other forms of AI like energy-based models and so on are so good at finding patterns, right? They're really good at pattern recognition if you feed them enough data to train on, especially like in languages. And that's a threat or an opportunity, given that the AIs will probably move in strongest to any kind of work or work task that has an algorithmic character over it. It's also moving into heuristics, given that if you start putting agents together, you can create agentic workflows. And agentic workflows can be purpose-driven much more than algorithmically driven. You can set a goal, right? Just figure it out, work together. You have an architecture, an infrastructure, maybe even embodied intelligence once we get to robotics, right? Which will also start moving into the heuristics. And this is the area, I think, which is the most interesting one when it comes to like really complementing us humans. I mean, if you can work together with AI, it makes you so much stronger, right? So what's left? The mystical stuff, right? Discovery, insight, innovation. And that requires a different kind of mindset and a different kind of intelligence, a different kind of leadership. a different way of and capacity to train for discovery than we have been focused on creating value over here in the algorithmical and heuristic parts. I think that's the big kind of interesting stuff and the big mind shift that we'll see unfolding over a long time from now.
How do you think about that, Jon, when you hear as a leader in a big chunk of people? What's your reaction? Are you going to open up with a mystical thing, or are you going to, how do you embrace that?
I'm a pretty practical person. So I think that I trust my colleagues a lot, that, I mean, their skill set and their interests and their energy also needs to be free to work in a way that they like. So I think that as a leader, to control the individuals, what they do or don't do, I would say is the wrong way. Encouraging everybody, also accepting also that some are scared and think that, well, I don't want to work so much with it. I don't want to be an ambassador for AI within the company. That is also okay. In the long run, I think for everybody, it will be impossible to say, I don't want to work with AI, because it will become such a natural part of our daily life. And sometimes I think about, the IoT revolution, when everybody heard, wow, everything's going to be controlled, and your fridge will send a message to the grocery and it will be delivered the milk, so it will always be filled. We heard that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I don't know anyone that has a fridge like that. I would like to have one, but
I like going to the supermarket.
Yeah, that's probably, maybe that's the answer. Yeah, it's definitely technically solvable, not even super difficult, especially not today with all the grocers are being online with open system. You could connect and you could order and you can have shipments, and maybe the last part from the door to the fridge is still not solved. But if that's the only problem that remains, it would have been solved. So maybe the answer is that, yeah, but some of the parts we don't want to leave yet. We actually like to go and buy the food, even though we complain about it the whole time. But that's human kind.
What's your belief, Bhavin?
I think it's an interesting space right now. There are, as you said, algorithmic work would more and more be taken over. That is what will happen. I ended up seeing some video where they are sewing shirts and t-shirts, and they are wearing a camera on the helmet that is recording their moves of how the sewing is done, which is then in background is training an LVM, large visual model. So these are the things which are happening right now. I know in US there are companies who are making devices to record our actions visually in a natural physical space. Because LLM is about language, but now we need to look at the physical side of it. And so they will start to automate other processes going forward. I mean, that will happen. So some of the heuristic processes will also start to happen as well. The third aspect is what you said about mystical. That is general artificial intelligence that we are far from. There are attempts right now. But before that, we need to solve a couple of problems. For example, AI taking so much energy. That needs to be solved. If you just think about a human brain, it works on millivolts. It has electrical supply of millivolts. However, it is able to process such complex tasks day in, day out. And our chips right now is nowhere near to that. So there is a lot of tech innovation needs to happen before we are going there in AGI. And there are concepts like neuromorphic computing, genetic algorithms, genetic programming. all of these concepts are being developed as a tech. So there is a road ahead for all of us. A lot of people will have a job, that's for sure. But it's a mind shift to learn those skills, looking forward and be there. And what you talked about NATO and your question, for me, this is a mind shift. And I think if you look at it as a person, you evolve every 10 years. Your thought process, your principles and value systems changes almost every 10 years. As a family, maybe every 15. As a society, maybe 20 to 30. This is a mind shift of a society because of the external circumstances. And we have all realized that we have to counter something, a threat, which might be real, might not be real, but it is perceived real. And we are preparing for it. Like what we will prepare as an individual to a new programming language. There is nothing different. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and I agree. And a fun aspect of it is for consultancy industry. 10 years ago, many consultants didn't want to be involved in defense industry. They were peaceful. I don't want my work to be used to harm other people.
Correct.
Today, it's very popular to work within the defense industry because people want to be able to protect the free world. And it's a short period of time to change your mind so drastically in what you want to apply your knowledge to.
I'm thinking about an example of I think it's in New Delhi that there's guys going with bikes delivering lunch packages, and they've been doing that for 100 years or 200 years.
Yes.
And the big transportation companies try to copy it, but they don't know how to fix it. And that's the perfect example of some things we can't solve with the tech.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's unsolvable in that way. But I mean, this talk, I could sit here for hours and listen to you guys, but to summarize it somewhat, the tech shift is there, but it's mainly the solution could be to have a mind shift. Am I?
I think for a tech shift to occur, you need a mind shift. We're not going to be able to take full advantage of this technology and leverage it and integrate it in our society, how we work, if we don't go through a mind shift. And I think what you were talking about in terms of fear is so important to engage with, to admit that it's normal for a human being when things change to feel discomfort. And the answer to that is probably not to say, stop being afraid, but to ask, what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
And maybe the person will say, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my place in this company. And you will then, as a leader, have to replace that with a bigger purpose that assures this person that your place is not in your title, in your chair, or in the tasks that you perform every day. Your place in this organization is to work towards this purpose that we're trying to deliver on.
Yeah.
And that's also a mind shift, I think, for many leaders to engage more purposefully with their teams.
Good summarized. Very good summarized. Shall we have this to be continued in a year to see if Anna-Paula's projection has been correct, or we'll see if we have moved somewhere else in this mindset? Shall we agree on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sure.
The people who are watching this talk, is it okay if they contact you all?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you have all the answers. Thank you so much for joining us today, Anna-Paula.
Thank you.
You too, Jon.
Thank you.
Bhavin.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you.